administration over the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP. Here's California Attorney General Rob Bonta.
Alongside 20 attorneys general and a governor's office, we're suing the U.S. Department of Agriculture for demanding that we turn over deeply personal data about every single applicant and recipient of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as SNAP, in our state, and for threatening to withhold funding unless we comply. Now the Trump administration is demanding that states turn over personal sensitive data, names, Social Security numbers, home addresses, even for people who applied years ago.
SNAP is a program that provides billions of dollars in food assistance to tens of millions of low-income families across the country. It's funded by the federal government and administered by each state. USDA says it intends to use the collected data to ensure the integrity of SNAP, including by verifying the eligibility of benefit recipients. Attorneys general who are filing the lawsuit say the federal government requests could scare people away from such programs. They also claim the Trump administration is trying to target immigrant communities by doing so. The plaintiffs include New York, California, Michigan, and Washington, D.C. And joining us now to discuss the 21 states suing to block USDA from collecting SNAP data is Tony Kinnett, national correspondent to Daily Signal and host of the Tony Kinnett Cast radio show and podcast. Good to see you again, Tony. So Mike can't be with us today. Apparently his power's out. There's a storm in Florida. So just you today, these states are arguing USDA is exceeding its authority by demanding that states hand over personal information. What do you think? What legal restrictions are there in data collection of this type by the federal government?
So as we've seen so far, there's not really anything in local or state policy, at least any of the state or Commonwealth constitutions, which say they can't share certain data they collect with the federal government. If federal dollars are flowing in, they can say, where are these dollars going? That's in the plenary power of the Congress, both houses, as well as every single federal section of the judiciary branch, from the federal district courts all the way up through the appellate and the Supreme Courts, the executive agencies as well. That's been the case since 1875. So in case of the SNAP benefits, obviously a newer approach, there are two things that I do want to draw a little bit of question and concern regarding this lawsuit. First of all, it is something that Americans are concerned about, that SNAP benefits are going to those who need it most, those who are unable to work, those who aren't making enough to make ends meet, who are trying to provide for families, especially with young children. As a former teacher, I wanted to make sure that my students were getting meals not just during the year, but also during the summer, and that every single dollar that was spent to that was going to those kids. Accountability and transparency are important. But regarding the immigration issue that you cited right before I hopped on screen, I will say it's strange here, because illegal immigration, I was told that illegal immigrants weren't receiving SNAP benefits. Are they or aren't they? Because they shouldn't be receiving them according to state and federal law. And additionally, immigrant communities, well, yes, there are certain provisions that immigrant communities who are legally allowed to be here, they have visas, or they are immigrant now legal citizens of the United States. That's totally fine. I'm not really sure what the issue is there, other than this seems like political posturing over money coming in. That's a little suspicious.
Okay, you make some good points there, Tony. But in your view, how much influence should the government have over state-run programs like SNAP?
So here's the thing. If the state was levying funds, so I'm here in Indiana, right? So normally if Indiana's collecting taxes for me, we don't exactly have the lowest property taxes in the country, which is quite a shame. The Indiana government then decides how to spend my money. Now, I may not agree with how I like that particular money spent, but the Indiana government is not necessarily responsible to then deliver all of the data on that to the federal government, and the feds don't have to approve how Indiana is spending its money. But if the feds are sending money to the states, the reason that states have administration over those particular funds is not because they're giving the states the power over SNAP. It's because state legislatures and agencies likely speak with people who are citizens of those states more than some individual in a Washington, D.C. executive agency office. So it's not that the state has control over it to decide who does and doesn't get SNAP from a legality perspective. It's that they're stewards, right? They are down the chain of command on this. And the federal government is saying, as long as you follow federal law, which is what's currently under question, then you can administrate SNAP. Just as on your network, you guys have producers, you have senior producers and tech producers who don't get to make up their own rules. They do what the chain of command says, just like my editor in chief. She tells me what to do, and I start getting a little bit loose with things. Yeah, the hand might get a little bit tighter when it comes to performance review time.
So we have to ask the question when it comes to data collection, especially when it comes to the government, perhaps. What is their track record, when the federal government or agencies collect data? How often are they using that data legitimately to uncover fraud or abuse?
I'm not sure what you mean by how often do they use that legitimately, as opposed to what maybe in this case.
Well, what is the track record? I mean, Republicans apparently are in support of this move, but if the roles are reversed and a Democrat administration is collecting data, would we feel different about it when it comes to your personal data, right, being in the hands of certain government agencies when it comes to food assistance, like SNAP, for example?
Well, if you're taking SNAP benefits, then again, you are taking federal dollars. Those aren't just state dollars, those are federal dollars. And so again, if the government is going to keep track of how they're spending money, whether it's a Democrat or a Republican administration, that's an essential. Again, as a former teacher and education policy advisor, I know that federal tax dollars that do go towards state education departments, those include a little flagging system that includes some kinds of personal data. But the data isn't scrutinized for anything nefarious, rather than saying, yes, this individual is receiving these particular state or federal benefits. I don't see anything in some of the complaints that have been issued by the state's attorneys general that are suggesting this data could be used for something nefarious, unless there are individuals participating in the program who are, by federal law, not allowed to participate in the program. But that's no different than Social Security fraud. I mean, if I was on SNAP benefits, the federal government should already know that, except this has been delineated to various states over the years because it simply wasn't something the federal government was intent on looking. And, well, I mean, you don't really have to look at the engine under the hood of the car as long as the light's not on and the car's running fine. But if smoke starts pouring out of the hood, you're no longer going to be relying on the little light on the dashboard to say, hey, there's an engine problem. You might have to lift up the hood and take a look to double check.
So I guess the core question is, I mean, there has to be a right balance between oversight and your personal privacy. For example, should immigration status be known to certain federal agencies when it comes to SNAP?
Absolutely. Because again, according to federal law, illegal immigrants are not allowed to participate in SNAP unless they're fulfilling very specific federal rules in very, very specific cases. And by the way, those very specific cases, I want them to enjoy those particular benefits. I want immigrants here who are below a certain financial threshold to enjoy those benefits, just like I want American citizens who are below a certain threshold to enjoy SNAP benefits, so that they can essentially use that as a leg up to essentially escape from that, right? So they can put themselves on better financial footing, so they can perhaps escape some certain debts, so they can get out of certain problems, processes, so they can gain a better footing on their job or housing. That's what the program is for. And if there are individuals who are on that program, there's no shame in that particular program. There's no shame in that status being known to the federal government. I have yet to see anything that suggests that the federal government is going to say, yes, we know there's illegal immigrants out there on SNAP, but if we only knew who they were, we'd round them up en masse. We haven't seen any of that so far. We've seen individuals that are arrested alongside violent criminals that are at the exact same place that those individuals committing violent crimes are congregating. Right now, I don't see anything to suggest that personal data is maybe being sacrificed here because the government is taking a look at who is participating in federal government programs.
How do you view potentially the federal government pulling funding for certain states who refuse to provide these data?
Well, again, if you are going to take federal dollars, then you have to play by the rules, because the idea of federal dollars is, if you're in California, again, I'm in Indiana, you are going to abide by federal law. So I, as a Hoosier, agree to pay money towards assisting your state in something, along with the citizens of Nebraska and Iowa and Florida and New York and et cetera ad nauseum. So if your state doesn't play by those rules, you don't get access to the money. Federal funds are not things the states are owed. They are things the states participate in. You have to play by federal rules in order to gain access to federal funds. So I see that as a fair thing. If you just get access to the money no matter what, well, then why do you have to play by federal rules? You're just going to get the check in the mail anyway, so why bother? And I think this has become a massive financial strain and a massive social and institutional strain that's caused a lot of distrust between Americans in different states, because certain states play by the rules and certain states and commonwealths don't. And that's a significant issue when we roll around to certain Senate and House elections in which people are running on vastly different things regarding federal policy that not everyone's playing the same rules for. And this is how you get anger over things like, for example, SALT deductions that are very unpopular with the vast majority of Americans.
Do taxpayers have a right to know if their dollars are going to undocumented immigrants?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that taxpayers have a right to know if their dollars are going anywhere. What about being proud of tax dollars? I love seeing my tax dollars be spent in ways that should be spent responsibly. This is something we don't ever talk about because, we hate taxes. We throw tea into the harbor over unjust taxes. There is a possible future, albeit an unlikely one, in which Americans can reach a point where they are satisfied on certain programs their tax dollars are going to. And I think that as long as there are programs consistently that are hidden from view, I don't get to say whether I want those monies to go there or not. Maybe there are Americans who do want monies going to X number of illegal immigrants on SNAP benefits. But we're not going to know if people are trying to play fast and loose with that data. Again, either the government is totally accountable to the people or it is not. And some mid-level bureaucrat or some state official doesn't get to decide how I, in a completely different state, spend my taxes that I'm required to annually, and then that money goes to them regardless, is incredibly unfair to me. And it is technically a violation of taxation without representation.
Okay, real quick, we just have about 30 seconds. Do you think this sets a precedent for future administrations to do similar things in terms of data collection?
I don't think that it's really precedent in this particular case because we've seen this before. It's more of a federal law question. And yeah, I think that future administrations, if there are programs administrated by the state, but funded by the federal government, yes, the federal government should have oversight over it. Again, it's the money of everyone, yours, mine, those who are watching. We should get to see where those dollars go, whether it's rebuilding homes in Maui, whether it's looking at FEMA efforts in North Carolina, or whether we're looking at SNAP benefits and who they go to in various states. We all have a stake in it. Therefore, we get to see what's inside.
Okay, Tony. Well, it's been good to talk to you. I wish Mike was here. It would have been more fun conversation.
Same.
Not saying that it's not fun. It was very fun today. Thank you very much.
Take care. Look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Yep. Next, President Trump cuts the red tape and red ribbon and takes